But first, to Rio, where the Dublin-based director of THG Sports, Kevin Mallon, was released from prison over the weekend. The Superior Court of Justice in Brazil granted an injunction on Friday authorising Mallon's release following his arrest on August the 5th on charges of mis-selling Olympic tickets. Mallon's release coincided with the statement from the Hickey family in which they outlined their extreme concern for Mr. Hickey and called on the government to urgently intervene, although reports suggest that Pat Hickey could be released from prison as early as today. I'm joined in studio by Anne-Marie James, a solicitor with Kirwan McKeown James Solicitors, who've been appointed to act on behalf of Pat Hickey's family. Anne-Marie James, good morning.
Good morning, Pat.
Now, what is your role in all of this?
I'm acting as solicitor and really counsellor to the Hickey family. Fred and his wife are clients of mine, and when this all arose, they came to me and asked what I could do to help to try and guide them through the dreadful situation in which they find themselves as a family, with their father incarcerated in probably one of the most notorious prisons certainly in Brazil, and with what I would consider flagrant abuse of his human rights, with no access to, he has lawyers, but whilst the police are saying exactly what they like over the airways without charging him, with no charge, he's effectively gouged from speaking and is languishing in this prison as a 71-year-old man with a serious medical condition.
Now, as a solicitor, what legal moves are you able to make or can you make?
Well, the first issue was we had heard that he had solicitors in Brazil, and my immediate concern was they were appointed by the OCI. Were they commercial lawyers? Were they criminal lawyers? And so I, first of all, decided that it was really important to check that out. I recommended to the family that they would appoint a firm of criminal lawyers here, and they appointed Sheehan Dunphy and Partners. So they're now in a position to liaise with the criminal lawyers in Brazil, and having spoken to or been privy to a video where we tried to have the family make some contact with the lawyers as well, to try and establish lines of communication for them with their father, because they haven't had any communication with him whatsoever. I feel happy that they are competent, and
so he is well represented legally by a criminal firm in Rio.
Yes.
And was there no possibility of, even though it might be maybe an undignified thing to do, to queue up outside with all the other relatives and go visit him in that prison?
Well, his first thing that he wanted done actually was he asked that his wife Sylviane would go home, and even though she didn't want to go home and leave him there, it was going to take 20 to 30 days to get to see him anyway, and for that reason he sent a message through his lawyers and pleaded with her to go home. So she did. There have been what I understand and consider to be defamatory remarks about his son Stefan. So I think the concern about them going over, and hopefully if he's released they will be able to go over, but the concern is, are they going to be arrested? I mean, to wonder, given the exposure of his passport details, how
now we know from everyone reporting from Rio that this is kind of normal. It's an identification process for the media saying we got this guy and he is who he's supposed to be. That's not necessarily so surprising under the Brazilian legal system. Perhaps the manner of his arrest might be more unusual.
Well, there is a presumption of innocence in the constitution in Brazil. I believe that the police there have flagrantly, completely ignored that. So whether it's business as usual in Brazil, I think the photographs of a 71-year-old man in a state of undress, I think the videoing of the arrest, I don't know that that's quite normal procedure. I think that was an attempt to utterly degrade him, and the photographing of his passport and all of his security details and videoed to the world as well is a huge security breach. It's also the passport, which I didn't know before this, but passport is actually owned by the state, so they have breached our protocol. And then I believe that they have the absolute nerve to come on our radio airwaves and try and justify that behaviour.
But the passport in any jurisdiction of someone who is under investigation and who might potentially be a flight risk because they're not domiciled in that particular country, it would be routine for police to take a passport and, if you like, mind it pending the investigation's conclusion. I mean, that would not be unusual.
Absolutely, and I'm not objecting to that. I think that is a very normal procedure. But to photograph it and expose those photographs across the media is outrageous. And
do you know anything about the second passport?
Well, again, I didn't know this until this all happened. Apparently, it's quite normal for businessmen and women who travel a lot and might be going into countries where if they lose their passport or if they have a stamp from another particular country, they won't be let in. And so that apparently is quite normal. That second passport was issued correctly and properly and is also the state.
So there are two Irish passports. I can understand, for example, if you've been to Israel, that this might be an issue going into some Arab countries. So I know that has been a practice in the past. Some people, of course, will, because they qualify, will get a British passport.
Yes,
absolutely. And carry two. So that's not that terribly unusual. Now,
I think what I was probably more upset about the passport was that the Department of Foreign Affairs saw fit to make their objection known to the Brazilian authorities about that. And I feel that during the course of that conversation or objection that they might have actually mentioned that the manner of the arrest of an elderly Irish citizen who's innocent until proven guilty, who hasn't even been charged, should have been mentioned.
You are calling on the Irish state, the Minister for Foreign Affairs, to get involved in all of this. Pat Hickey doesn't do a lot to help himself, though, because the advice given to him by another solicitor, not you, was to, put Shane Ross back in his box when Shane Ross went over seeking to have a representative on the investigating committee of the OCI into this whole ticketing scandal. So on the one hand, want to stamp on a minister, and we know that Pat Hickey famously has had rows with ministers for sport over the years, and then when he's in a spot of bother, he looks for help in a way that maybe he has no right to expect.
I don't act for Pat Hickey, and that was not something that he said. I think that was something that was certainly said in a piece of advice to him, as far as I am aware. But I don't act for him. I do act for a very distressed family whose father is in prison in a dreadful situation. He's exposed to mosquitoes, he's exposed to malaria and the Zika virus at the moment. He's asked for mosquito repellent. We are getting a huge amount of misinformation. We don't know what's happening. We get more information from the media. The family, should I say, get more information from the media than they do from anywhere else. So I want to establish for them a line of communication so that I can back out, let them be in contact with the lawyers. The lawyers have now said that it's in order for them to write to their dad and get letters into him. Mm-hmm. They'd be able to do that. That should be a huge comfort for him.
Is he being treated any differently, though, to anyone Brazilian who would be under investigation for a crime, and ticket touting in Brazil is a crime, whereas it's not a crime in Ireland? So is he being treated any differently? Because,
Well, I think he's being treated worse. I don't think any murderer would have been photographed in the way that he was. I think that the Dawn raid at 6 a.m. was just a publicity stunt. I understand that is business in Brazil. I have a huge interest in human rights, and even though it might be business as usual, it doesn't make it okay. It's not acceptable, and I think that the Irish government have a job to do to protect their citizens and say to another country, whether you like the man or not, he's innocent until he's proven guilty, and they've to step up to the plate and say, you can't do that to our citizens. They're elected representatives. They're here to represent us.
Do you have confidence, though, that they can do something like that? If you think of the situation that young Mr. Halawa is in, 3 years incarcerated in an Egyptian prison, and in spite of the best efforts we hear of the Irish government, no improvement has come about in his circumstances. So Pat Hickey has been in prison a relatively short time. There is due process underway. He will get a court hearing perhaps as early as today. We're not sure about, because
we're
after
hearing
Kevin Mallon's release, there may be moves today.
Yes, I think it would be very difficult for the Brazilian authorities to justify keeping him in prison if they have released.
But you know what I mean? If you compare it to
Mr.
the
Mallon.
Halawa case, and the efforts of the Irish government have fallen on deaf ears.
Well, I'm not obviously as familiar with the Halawa case other than in general terms, and I absolutely agree that for any Irish citizen to be incarcerated in that way, and I'm aware that Amnesty International are doing a huge amount of work there. Prisoners Overseas is also another body that provides incredible assistance on the ground to prisoners in situations like this. And Pat, this could be any of us. We could be in the wrong place at the wrong time, and you're picked up, misidentification, and putting it into perspective. This is a ticket touting accusation. That's all it is. This isn't murder or
no,
anything.
But this is against the background.
And to treat anybody in that way,
This is against the background, as we've heard, of relatives of Olympians not being able to get tickets for the opening ceremony and trying to get them last January or even before. And yet we have OCI tickets for the opening ceremony swilling around in Rio, freely available to those who've got the money to pay for them. Now, that is a scandal that needs investigation. Perhaps it might not be a crime in the Irish jurisdiction. It is a crime in the Brazilian jurisdiction, and it has to be investigated. It's as simple as that. Now, sympathies go to a man who's 71 years of age, humiliated in the way he was, put in prison in probably fairly primitive circumstances, and that is a personal tragedy for him. But it is due process in Brazil.
Well, I think Liam Collins in The Independent today wrote a very fair piece where he says, look, this is how clubs make their money. They have hospitality, etc. Of course, I sympathise with any relatives who couldn't get to see their children. I having looked at some of the Olympics, all I could see were empty seats. I don't think that many people had the money to get over there or wanted to go that far.
But Irish Olympic families could not get the tickets, and yet there seemed to be an abundance of OCI tickets. Yeah,
well, again, I don't know about that. I can't comment on that. It's not within my knowledge, and I would regret that for anybody who wanted to see their relative and couldn't.
So where do we go to from here? I mean, it is hoped that Pat Hickey will be released fairly promptly. Kevin Mallon released over the weekend, and perhaps in a day or two. What then? He'll be stuck in Rio, presumably.
Well, he could be stuck in Rio for some considerable time. I at least, if he's out of prison, he will be maybe in a safer environment. His mental and physical health, I'm sure, would not be as put upon as he is in a cell. And then he will have access to the law and face whatever charges are brought, and then let the due process begin. I think that's very important. And again,
so that's basically what the family want, is they want to get him out of a place where he's being held, because we're getting one side of the story, not the other side of the story. He is in extreme discomfort. He has some health issues we've heard reported. Are they serious health issues?
Well, he has a heart condition.
He's been able to enjoy the Olympics and all that up to the point of his arrest. There didn't seem to be any health issue.
He has a heart condition which he had electric shock treatment earlier this year to regularise his heart. My understanding that particular condition is one where the electric shock treatment can only go on for a certain length of time, and then that's it. There is no other treatment. What I would be concerned about, and the family is that the effect of this degradation and isolation and
inevitable stress.
Allegation causes such stress that depletes your immune system, puts pressure on your heart, and that with the 71-year-old man is obviously of huge concern to the family. And they've suffered, these are very, Pat Hickey is a very public figure, but they are a very private family, and they have had cars outside their houses. They're terrified about being chased down the street with small children. In one occasion, one of them had to leave a shopping centre with her children in hand because walked straight bang into pictures of their grandfather on the paper. That is just unacceptable. And I have great respect for Irish people. I think we are innately decent people, and it is quite astonishing that there's been this level of malevolence about him. And I think at this stage, everybody's probably afraid to say anything good about Mr. Hickey in case they get caught up in it. And I think it needs, like the article today in The Independent, Liam Collins says we need to get this into perspective. And there are families here. And it's, again, as I say, everybody sitting in their home looking at their TV is not thinking, I could be that person. I could be that wrong person at the wrong time. and end up in a jail.
And we know Irish people, there's a truck driver in France languishing in prison without any due process because they go about it a different way with an investigating magistrate. Somebody else in the Canary Islands in these kind of difficulties, and the Irish consular services are asked to intervene. It does seem, though, that countries do their own thing, and no matter what our Minister for Foreign Affairs or his consular service will try to do on behalf of Pat Hickey and others, they just say this is the way we do it. Well,
I would like the Minister to call the Brazilian ambassador in and let him know that we are watching what they're doing over there, as he should do in any other scenario, and make it clear that we want them to abide by the law. They're, in my view, in breach of their own laws. Certainly the presumption of innocence has been tramped on the ground in this case. So I think that it is very important. Who else is going to stand up for citizens abroad other than their own government? It's absolutely their brief.
So what will happen today? I mean, from your point of view, what else can you do?
We're hoping to meet the Minister on Wednesday, and he has said that he has asked the Irish ambassador to remain on the ground in Rio, and I think that's a really positive step. The Department of Foreign Affairs have set up a direct communication between their people on the ground and Fred Hickey, Mr. Hickey's son. They're all very positive steps for the family. There has been then a firm of solicitors appointed here who will liaise with the criminal lawyers over there. And I think it's also very important. Obviously, there are investigations going to start here. I think it's very important that maybe Mr. Hickey would be available to come and answer whatever questions. I don't know how they can have an investigation when the main person is in a cell in Rio. So I would hope that maybe that pressure on the Brazilian government to have a speedy trial so that he can get home and deal with all of the allegations here.
Do the family ever ask themselves why it appears that Pat Hickey has so few friends in high places?
I can't answer that.
No, but is it to do with his own personality? I mean, he is a very successful man. He has dominated the Olympic Council of Ireland for so many years, for decades. And he has given it a very high profile. Along the way, he's probably stepped on more than a few toes.
Well, it seems that, I hadn't realised how many, he's the president of so many of the different, he's not only the Olympic Council of Ireland, but also the European Council, and then he's a member of the Uber International Olympic Council. And apparently you have to be invited to be a member of that. He's an executive member of a 12-person committee as well. And vice president.
So he's been massively successful.
So he's been massively successful on an international scale. Yes, I have seen the papers, and I'm blown away by it. And I was trying to work out where is this level of hatred coming from. And part of it, I think that Ireland has been rocked by so much controversy, and we've all suffered so dreadfully coming through the recession, and there's a lot of anger out there for those things. Now we have a lot of this terrorist going on. People are afraid to travel. Your kids are going off on interrailing, and you can't wait till they come home in case they get caught up in a bomb. That's the only thing I can, because most of the public don't know this man.
Yeah, so, but they do remember Sonia O'Sullivan being forced to change her kit in the tunnel prior to competing in the Olympics. People do remember things like that. And maybe it's that, more than anything else, that has resonated with the public,
Well, I think he has a particular way of doing things, and obviously it has rubbed people up the wrong way. But I think that they should not lose the perspective of a man in a cell, not actually charged with anything, and how he was treated in that, and then tried by media. I mean, he's convicted and guilty by what has been...
Were he in this jurisdiction, the trial would be deferred, probably indefinitely, because such would be the level of prejudice.
Absolutely. No question about it. And I think also many journalists may not realise that until he's charged, defamatory comments are up there. This is not actually reporting on a charge. This is a conviction in paper, and I really might think about that.
Anne-Marie James, a solicitor with Kirwan McKeown James Solicitors, and acting on behalf not of Pat Hickey but of Pat Hickey's family. Thank you very much for joining us in studio.
Thank you, Pat.